You're watching the Press Row. I'm Mike Sherman. He's Barry Trammell, and he's John Rohde, and we're talking about the week Oklahoman spent celebrating the life of Wayman Tisdale. Guys, what will you remember most about Wayman, Barry?
Oh, well, I'm going to remember that smile, and I think I'll just remember the general excitement he brought to Oklahoma basketball 25 years ago. I had a guy in the newsroom stop by my desk yesterday, and huge basketball fan, OU basketball fan, but all kinds of basketball fan, NBA, everything. He said, Wayman made me a basketball fan. But I didn't care about basketball. This guy went to OU, went to graduate school at Missouri when Stepanovic and Sunvold were there, so they were playing big-time basketball. He said, I never cared. He said, but Wayman Tisdale came to OU, and I sort of drew me to him. And I said, I'm going to check this guy out. And now he's a basketball junkie, just because of the magnetism of Wayman Tisdale.
I watched him when I went to school at the University of Arizona. I watched him when I moved back to Colorado. So I'm an outsider looking in, and I was captivated by him. He couldn't miss. They used him perfectly, and he always smiled. I mean, he was a very memorable guy.
Barry, you were there Thursday in Tulsa when they honored Wayman with the memorial service. Have you ever seen anything like it?
No, I have. I've been to some services that were sort of similar in spirit and celebration, and I've also been to some services that were similar in terms of grand and opulent and big, but I've never been to anything that was both, and that was that was amazing. It was a state funeral that could have been in an old black church somewhere. That's what it was. It was an amazing emotional experience, and I think everybody came away moved, and it was unlike anything I've ever seen.
You went up there with John Helsley, and I was talking to Hells this morning. He was just captivated. It was so well run. Everybody who spoke 3 minutes or less, those kind of things. And he goes, and the music was really good. And I felt like saying, yeah, Helsley, it was pretty good. They had the best jazz musicians in the world in there. And I felt like saying if they wanted to break out and play 5-on-5, that would have been pretty good too. It was a great combination. And John Helsley was really, really impressed with the taste it was done with and the reverence that was given. Sean.
Barry, you talked about in your column today that's on News OK right now about the lessons of Wayman's life. In some ways, you had an eloquent speaker talk. What do you think really the takeaway, the lesson of his life for us all is?
Well, I think there's a couple. One is don't limit yourself. A lot of us can do one thing well, and we don't really branch out and try to do other things well. And Wayman, got to the end of one career that, he reached the pinnacle, and he said, I'm going to shoot for the moon on something else. And, he achieved it in the world of jazz. So he didn't put limits on himself, and the other was just the way he had, his humanity through it all was always an accommodating guy, was always a friendly guy, was never overly serious. The more you hear about about Wayman Tisdale, from everyone, the more you wanted to be around him. I think let's all ask ourselves that question. Do people want to be around us? And if the answer is not so much, then maybe we need to be more like Wayman Tisdale.
By the way, I like being around you guys.
Great humility. I don't think Wayman ever once pointed at himself in anything he ever did. And, as a jazz musician, it was the same as a basketball player. My favorite story about Wayman was the last time I saw him. I don't remember what game he was at, Barry. San Antonio. No, this was down at OU Lloyd Noble. He was at one of their games, and I was asking him about Blake Griffin, and just how good he is. And I go, hey, you think Blake could hang with Wayman Tisdale on the court? And he goes, oh, sure, but look, I'm using a cane. And, and that's as close as he ever got to bragging. And it just shows that here's the sad part. He was blessed in every way, but he wound up short in two areas. He never went to an All-Star game, true. Right. He never won a Grammy. And those who knew him best said he should have gotten both. He was a great overachiever and underappreciated, I think.
It's interesting you should say that, John, because that's a vibe I get from the NBA players who talked. It's almost as if they wish more NBA players like themselves had taken a minute to get to know Wayman. And the reaction to Wayman from the NBA. Can you ever remember a guy who scored, 15 points a game, never made an All-Star game, celebrated as much as Wayman was this week by the NBA owners and players and everybody? There's been a lot of press about him. Finally, I'll say what you said to start with, Barry. I think the lesson of Wayman is the smile, so let's all smile and say goodbye. That's all for the press row, but you can follow the best coverage team anywhere, every day at News OK and every morning in the Oklahoman.